$118,000 to study whether or not there's a guy named Thanos who's a Marvel Comics villain, and whether or not when he snaps his fingers, can he create lightning? So they hired a guy, gave him metal gloves to see if he could snap his fingers. That was $118,000 to see if we could recreate or simulate a Marvel Comics villain. The government's riddled with this stuff. $700,000 to study how a male parrot attracts a female parrot.
All right. Well, it just makes people crazy. Now the White House, the president is saying we're going to raise taxes. Senator Sanders, talking about raising taxes. Senator Wyden talking taxes. It feels like a lot of the things derailed, like the wheels came off the ship or the car here because of the pandemic, because of lockdowns. And we know that the House is going to launch probes into the origins of COVID. We're talking COVID relief fraud and possibly subpoena Dr. Fauci. We've been tracking Dr. Fauci for years. We want you to listen to this. Watch.
I didn't shut down anything. I recommended to the president that we shut the country down. And the only way to do that is by draconian means of essentially shutting down a country. We know that we can do that if we shut down. Well, if I knew at the time that shutting down would have such a dramatic effect on controlling the spread, obviously we would have shut down earlier.
Was it a mistake in so many states and so many localities to see schools closed as long as they were?
I had nothing to do. Let's get down to the facts.
What do you think, Senator?
Dishonesty, lying. I had him in committee, and I asked him why we couldn't open the schools, and he said it was too soon. He's on record at least 20 different times saying the schools should stay closed, and then 20 more times saying, well, maybe we should open them. He would flip-flop from both positions, but he never had the courage to look at the data. The data was apparent early in 2020 from Europe. They left the schools open in Sweden, and not one child died. They looked at the mortality of the teachers because, see, people said if you leave the kids may die, but their teachers will die. The rate of illness and mortality among teachers was the same as the general public. So the thing is there was data early on. He refused to see it because at every step his impulse was to shut down, lock down, and stop it. But it also didn't stop the disease. We locked the schools down for 2 years. Our kids, lost a year, 2 years of schooling. But every one of them still got it. 80 to 90% of your kids have already had COVID, despite everything Fauci tried to do.
Are you going to subpoena him?
Without question, I think the House will. I don't know that we will have the power to in the Senate, but I can promise you every day I am discovering something new about what he's done. And still, within government, the NIH and Health and Human Services, part of your government, are resisting giving us information on grants, information on reports. We asked for 250 pages. Health and Human Services, part of our government, blanked out all 250 pages. They blacked out, they redacted 250 pages of normal documents that every taxpayer should be able to see.
On what?
It's on the origins, it's on the grants, it's on the science of what was going on, it's on the funding.
Another cover-up.
Ultimately, this is where Fauci is culpable. He made the terrible judgment to fund dangerous research in a totalitarian country, and it wound up with a pandemic. History will record that he has a large amount of responsibility for this pandemic.
Senator Paul, thanks for joining us. Come back soon.
Thank you.
And I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
Thank the gentleman for yielding back. This legislation asks every member to answer a simple question. Do you put the needs of your constituents first, or do you put the preferences of federal bureaucrats first? We know that expanded telework during the COVID-19 pandemic harmed agency service to our constituents across multiple vital agencies. But instead of fixing those problems and making sure they never happen again if increased telework needs to continue in certain cases, the Biden administration is just blindly doubling down on federal telework across the board. Not to improve service to our constituents, but to dangle a shiny perk in front of existing federal workers and prospective new federal hires. My bill ensures that a new expectation is set for our federal government's workforce, that you need to return to your agencies and get the job done for the American people. Federal telework should only be utilized when it has been proven to improve agency performance, lower agency costs, ensure agency network security, and better disperse the federal workforce across the nation. In the meantime, it requires federal agencies to re-implement pre-pandemic policies, which were working just fine. Under this bill, we will know that whether we have increased federal telework or not, it will only be to ensure that federal agencies and their employees provide the best quality of service to our constituents and our nation. I urge my colleagues to support this much-needed bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.